I'm your host, Chris Noggle, and welcome back to the Real Estate Money School, where today I'm going to talk about the transition. I'm going to talk about the transitions we go through in life, the pivots, as some people call them, the things that change our destiny, the things that we fight, but yet become our legacies. But before I get into that, let's talk about all of you. Let's talk about your journey to becoming a rebel banker. That journey starts with a lot of things, and one of them is getting knowledge. One of the things in your journey you're doing is you're watching podcasts, going to events, going on virtual events to learn, to gain knowledge. And the person that once told you that knowledge is power lied to you. See, it's not the knowledge that's power. It's the application of knowledge that's the real power. So I want to give you an opportunity to get something for free. I want to give you a copy of this new booklet, Drifting Away from Traditional Car Buying. This booklet shows you how to get all the money back for all the cars you're ever going to buy, drive, and own. And I want you to have this booklet for free. And all you need to do is apply this knowledge. Go to chrisnoggle.com. 2 index finger swipes and you will see the Wealth webinar. Just click register. It doesn't cost you a penny. You put your info in and we will send you a copy of that booklet. You see, sometimes when you apply knowledge, you get shit for free. But let's get into the transition. Many of you may or may not know, but in my past as a young boy, one of the biggest things I wanted to do was become a pro snowboarder. That was one of the biggest goals I had, and I worked really hard at that. And I had a lot of people tell me I couldn't do that. They said, you live in Buffalo, New York. There's no mountains here. There's no big events here. How are you ever going to be a pro snowboarder? Some of my family members said, kid, you're dreaming. Hey, you know what? It's the dreamers that change the world. And I wanted to change just my destiny because I wanted to do something that everybody told me I couldn't do. And how I did it, quite simply, is I never gave up. I did what everybody else was unwilling to do. I didn't have the means, nor the money, nor the resources to go to the resorts, to travel to the big places like all the rich folks did. So what I did is I found a country club right by my house. It was built in a ravine. And I learned by watching sledders that when you come down the hill, there was a sand trap. You could build jumps out of it. I watched sledders jump these sand traps. And I'm like, you know what? There just might be a hope. Because even though I can't be at that resort as much as I want to learn on the big jumps, the real jumps, I can practice my trade, my skills, all the things I learned by watching the VHS tapes of my favorite snowboarders. I could learn them right here by building a jump out of that sand trap. And the only thing that can stop me is when the snow melts. So when the snow came, I said, Mom, after school, can you take me to the country club? And I would literally go there and I would build jumps out of the sand trap on this little place on the back of the hill where there was nobody there. Because, hey, I didn't want to be playing with the sledders. I didn't want to be in the way. And I just wanted my own little private park. So the biggest problem I faced was after school, I only had a couple hours. And about a half hour, sometimes an hour, depending on the amount of snow, would be wasted in building the jump. So then I might be down to 1 hour before it starts to get dark and before I hear that dreaded honk, beep, beep. And that would be my mom there to pick me up in her old beat up Monte Carlo. I'll never forget it, man. She drove a rear wheel drive Monte Carlo. We put snow tires on that thing. She had Monte Carlos forever. And I'll never forget that thing. It was maroon and had maroon interior. Not a bad car, but you know what? It's just sometimes those little things. And that was the dreaded honk that I got because that meant I had to go and I had to leave my passion. I had to leave my practice. My skills stopped right then and right there. But I also learned something. I learned that, you know what? One of the things that slowed me down in my learning curve to learn these tricks that I watched, that perfect crossbone, that perfect method that I saw in that video, I just wanted to master it. And it just took repetition. It took doing the same thing over and over again. It took doing it until it was mastered, until I didn't need to think about it, but time was against me. So I would run at my house up and down the backyard. We had about an acre of land. I would go out in that backyard. I'd put my big Sorel boots on and I would run up and down that backyard, up and down, up and down, up and down until I couldn't breathe anymore. I'd get so exhausted. I'd get so winded that I just couldn't do another lap. And what I was trying to do, folks, I was trying to build my stamina. I was trying to build my wind up so that when I got to that jump, that one secret little place at that Lockport Country Club, that one sand trap, I could run up the hill and I could get one, maybe two more hits, maybe three, maybe four, depending on how good in shape I was. And I did this over and over again. And then I actually, in school, I signed up for the wrestling team because I knew wrestlers were in really good shape. They always were. I had this one friend, Jay, and he was a wrestler and he was in tip top shape. And I asked him, how do you stay in such good shape? What's the training like? He said, we run the hallways. We run the hallways. We run the hallways. And when we can't run the hallways, we run the pool and we sweat and we run the pool and then we practice. I said, yep, that's what I need. I need to get in shape and I need some motivation because running up and down that backyard can be lonely. And sometimes you just don't want to go out there and do that in the cold. But you know what? When you're on a team and you got a coach and your coach says, all right, boys, put the running shoes on and go run the halls. Damn it, you're running. And when the coach says, get in that pool and sweat, and I want you to run those pool stairs up and down, up and down, up and down until you can't run them anymore. Well, you know what? I wasn't ever meant to be a wrestler. I was pretty good because I was a scrappy little guy. A little strong little guy, but I was never meant to be a wrestler. I was meant to be a snowboarder. So my intentions, my goals for being there were different than all these other guys on the team. They wanted to be varsity wrestlers. They wanted to go on and wrestle, whatever their goals were. I just wanted to get in shape so that I could run up the hill and get one more hit, one more trick dialed in that day. And wrestling put me there. But then there came a day where I was actually not too bad of a wrestler. I was doing tournaments and I was winning. And hey, to me, it was just part of the game, right? You get in shape, you go wrestle and you try to win because I always like winning, right? Who likes losing, right? I always want to win. And I got in shape and I won. And the coach came to me and the coach said, hey, listen, I want to move you up to the varsity team. I'm like, cool, man. I get one of those little letters on the jacket. No big deal to me. Didn't mean much. Just meant, hey, great. I'm winning. But when the coach said that, the coach said to me, yeah, but you're going to have to give up that snowboarding thing because I know every weekend you're traveling to these contests. Well, we're going to have tournaments on weekends. I said, coach, that's a problem. I said, I'm not willing to give that up. He says, well, you have to. If you want to wrestle on the varsity team, you're going to have to give that up. You know what I did? I said, coach, thanks for all you did. This is a lot of fun. I'll see you later. And I never went back. The transition. I had to transition from one thing that somebody else wanted me to be good at into the one thing that I wanted to be good at. And I went out there and I practiced on that country club and I ran up and down that hill and my friends would join me. Some of my friends from school, this guy, Chris Fox, who had the perfect method, he would join me and he could never keep up with me because I'm running up the hill, trick after trick after trick. And then you know what? Summer came, snow melted. Damn, can't practice anymore. So you know what? I had learned that out in Mount Hood snowboard camp, they snowboarded all summer. So I wanted to go there, but I needed the money. But I also learned that they had trampolines that they practiced on. So one year we saved up enough money and we got me a trampoline. And I went out in that backyard of my house and I duct taped socks and anything around the edge of the snowboards. Because if you don't, the edges of the snowboards are metal. You'll cut right through that trampoline. You'll rip that sucker right up. So what I learned is what they do is they would take socks, old socks, and they would put them around the edge and they would duct tape them to the snowboard. So that's what I did. And I went out there. And because I was in good shape, if you ever bounced on a trampoline, man, I could bounce forever. I could bounce for hours. I could learn trick after trick. And I did. All summer long, all I did is bounced on that trampoline. And went swimming in the above ground pool that we had at the house. And I went back there and I bounced until I couldn't bounce anymore. And my bounce wasn't just to have fun. My bounce was to dial in the trick, the 360, the grabs, the backflip, the rodeo. These were tough tricks. And I crashed a lot and I even bounced off that trampoline a lot of times. But you know what? I mastered the feeling. Although it wasn't the same as going off of a jump at that country club or at the resort, I got the feeling of what it felt like in the air. So then when it started snowing again, off I went to the country club, off I went to the resort. I signed up for a school bus trip where every single Sunday we would go to the resort. And my mom bought that for Christmas for me. So now I had the ticket. I had the ticket to go to the resort. So everything I'd learned on the trampoline, everything I'd learned at the country club was now transitioned into the real snowboard park. And I went there and I was pretty damn good. And everybody that didn't know me was like, wow, you're pretty good. And that drove the fire. And I kept doing that and doing that and doing that. The transition. You see, I didn't have the means and the resources to get there in the beginning, but I got resourceful so that when I did arrive, I had the skills, not the skills to pay the bills yet, but the skills to get the attention. And then I started competing, and that is exactly what I did, folks, to become a pro snowboarder. But you see, I couldn't become a pro without actually seeing another pro do it. And there was 2 riders. One day I heard that there was these 2 pros going to be at my local resort, Kissing Bridge. And they had just built a brand new snowboard park over in the north part of the mountain, or the hill. It's not a mountain. And I went there that day, got bright and early, got up. I think my mom gave me a ride there, and she hung out in the lodge. And I sat there and I'm waiting, watching. I'm like, where are the pros? Where are the pros? And then all of a sudden I saw 2 guys, and their names are Blair and Shane. And I saw those guys rip through that park like lightning. They went through that thing. They looked different than any other rider. They had a different, like they had all top gear. And all I did is I just took laps following behind them. You know, like that kid that's always behind you, like, kid, stop following me. That was me. I just stayed just far enough along behind, and I just kept watching them and watching them. And then I was sitting there watching them when they were hiking the park. I'm with the photographer, and I'm like, oh, these guys are so good. And then the guy was like, the photographer was actually like, well, why don't you go hit this? Stop standing around watching them, go hit it. And I'm like, you think, is that okay? So I did. I went in and I started hitting, and I got noticed. And Blair was like, hey, kid, you're pretty good. Come ride with us. So the rest of that day, I rode with those guys, and that photographer got some good photos of me. And at the end of it, he ended up giving me those photos, and I ended up using those. But that was my catapult. You see, that was that moment. That was the moment where I realized it was possible because I saw the path. I saw 2 pro riders at a resort from my hometown that had made it, that went on to be big pros. And then I saw them in the videos. The transition. So every one of these little things is a transition to the next level. Now, let me fast forward, because this is the most important part of what I'm going to teach you and what I'm going to tell you about in this solo podcast. You see, the transition was great as I was transitioning up to my dreams, up to my goals. And I did that. And those dreams, and I just kept moving that bar. When I'd accomplished one goal, I moved the bar again, transition to the next level. And I'd hit that bar, I'd transition to the next level. I was never satisfied. I would never do enough. I needed more. But then one day, at the peak of my career, in the mid 2000s, I'm out in Mammoth, California. If any of you have never been there, it's one of the meccas for snowboarding. And I'm out there riding with my teammates from 32 Boots. They paid for me to be out there. It was a big photo shoot. And I'll never forget that one morning. Got up, it was Bluebird. Bluebird means it's just sunny as hell. It was warm. About 30 when we woke up, but it was supposed to get up to 40. So I just wore just a hoodie. Or I don't know, maybe I had a flannel on, a hoodie or a flannel. I didn't have a jacket on. Now back home, it's usually pretty cold and gray. Back out here, it's sunny Bluebird days. So I'm pumped. We roll up. I'm super excited. First day on the hill, we roll up to the park. And there in front of me lies what I thought was the most perfect spectacle of jumps. One, another perfectly lined up. And I eyed those things up. And through all my practice, I had all those tricks in my head. Sure enough, I wanted to be the guinea pig. I wanted to be the guy that hit these things first in front of all my teammates, just show them how this shit's done. And I went toward that jump thinking I knew how to go fast. Normally in a jump, you're going to pace it out. You're going to kind of see how long it is. But I asked, that's about a 45 footer. Perfect. I know how fast to go for that. And I went, but where I miscalculated, I didn't zig one time. Okay. I pretty much pointed it thinking, it'll be fine. California, these jumps are big. They'll handle it. Long landings. And I hit it and I went off and I spun cork 5. And at about 360 degrees in my spin, I watched the landing go bye-bye. And I said, oh shit. Because that means I'm way too high. I went way too fast. And what's going to happen next is either I'm going to get lucky and catch the tail end of the landing, or I'm going to land flat. And you know what? In that moment, it was a split second, but it felt like eternity in the air. I crashed. I hit the ground. Feet first, then ass, and then everything else hit. That injury took me out. That injury, and I kept riding the rest of that trip because I just pushed through it. But my tailbone was broken. My butt wasn't just black and blue, it was pure black. I tore the bicep, and not only that, I had 2 bruised heels, severely bruised heels to the point where I could barely walk. Now, this might not sound like some of the bad injuries. I've tore shoulders, I've tore knees, I've broken my hip, I've broken ribs, I've broken wrists, I've broken noses. I've had lots of injuries in snowboarding, but this injury at this stage in my life was the one that did it. Because this injury took me out the entire season, not for 6 months. This injury was the one that got me here. Because the pain I endured and the energy I put in trying to rehab and get better so I could get back on the hill was like no other injury I ever had. And that season, I couldn't win a contest. I couldn't film. I filmed a video part. We just watched it the other day just to reminisce. The video part was awful compared to what I was capable of. You see, at that point, I'd reached my transition. Didn't want to admit it. But after the season was over, I realized it. This might be over. This dream, this journey of being a pro rider, and I was a pro rider for a long time, may have just ended because now in my mind, I didn't have that fire. All I knew was the pain, and all I knew was I couldn't win. So I had doubt, and that was it. And for the next couple of years, I kept trying to keep my sponsors. I kept trying to win. I kept trying to get video parts, none of which worked. Every athlete goes through this point where they were at the top of their game. Then all of a sudden something happens and they're not at the top anymore. It's difficult. Realization kicks in and you say, holy crap, I may never make it back into the pro circuit. What am I going to do next? Well, for me, it was just keep trying, be consistent and persistent, keep going, and you'll come back. Well, I never came back. Several years went by. Me keep trying. I kept trying. One sponsor left, another one left, another one left, another one left. Pretty soon I'm unsponsored with no paycheck. Still had my shops. I had my retail stores, but it wasn't my passion. That fire had slowly burned out. And I'll never forget, I got a call from a guy, somebody that doesn't really call me a lot, but somebody I knew, and they called me up and they said, hey, listen, this resort, Hollymont's looking for a new coach for their national team. Would you be interested? And I said, no, sir. I'm a rider, not a coach. I'm a rider, not a teacher. And that was that. He said, all right, well, if you know anybody, here's the number, give a call. Great. Thanks, man. Yeah, I'll look around. I'll pass the number on to somebody. I sat there and I thought about it. And I thought about it. And I thought about it. And my ego as a pro rider said, nope, you're not going to coach. You're a rider. Why are you going to coach? But then I started thinking, you know what? My paycheck's ended. I don't have any more money. I'm not getting money. I can't ride. I'm not getting paid to snowboard. Maybe it is time for me to transition. And I reluctantly took the coaching position as the lead coach for this new team. Knew nothing about what the team did. I knew that it wasn't a full freestyle team, but in my mind, I'm like, I can change them. I can take these kids that are into racing and I can make them want to ride the park. That didn't quite work now, did it? But anyway, as I'm doing it, what I started to find that I really loved it. What started as just a means for me to get a paycheck to be on the hill riding and doing what I love now turned into a means to actually show what I learned in my journey to all these kids, to teach them what being a professional athlete was, to teach them what the psychology and the mental anguish they have to go through to make it, to push them, to tell them to stop being a baby, to tell them to get their ass up when they crash and they're crying, saying, I can't do it, I'm hurt. No, you're not hurt. Get your ass up. We got a contest to win. To then go into nationals at Copper Mountain, Colorado, and then watching these athletes, the first year as coach, take the podium and win. Now, this is where it hit me. You see, I knew what it was like. I knew the feeling of what it was to stand on that podium, and I loved it. Fed off of it for years. That attention, that one moment where you are the best. Been there many, many times. But now I'm down in the crowd. I'm looking up at the stage at my athletes standing on that podium with a smile from ear to ear. And the feeling I had inside was a feeling of success, was a feeling of accomplishment, was a feeling that even though I'd been on that stage, even though I'd been on that podium, I didn't feel the way I did now. Because now I was proud. I was proud that I was able to help them realize their dreams. I was able to help them fight through an entire season, which is very difficult, fight through injuries, fight through teammates trying to take them down, fight through other athletes trying to take them down. And now I'm watching them up there and I was proud. Now, I had never had this before. I didn't have any children, so I didn't know what that was like to have children. Because I guess now that I'm a dad, I know all about what being proud is. I know all about what doing for others is. But back then, up to that point, I'd kind of always done for me. Because being a snowboarder, being a skateboarder, we know dedication. Okay? Skateboarding and snowboarding, all of us know dedication. Not only that, we know repetition leads to results. I knew all this stuff, but I'd never transitioned that to somebody else. Never, ever. And the funniest thing is about this transition is it took a failure to lead to a success. Now, all athletes on their journey will fail. All of you, whether you're entrepreneurs, no matter what you do, you will fail. Get over it. Embrace it. Ask for it. The faster you fail, the faster you'll succeed, because through failure, you learn some important lessons. You learn the things you need to know to succeed. If you don't fail, you can't succeed. And if you succeed without failing, you got lucky. And I don't believe in luck. I think luck follows opportunity. That's all. But as an athlete, we always had a long list of failures because those failures led to those successes. Those crashes led to those successes. We learn how to crash, fail in order to succeed. We knew that if we were going to be repetitious and keep practicing a trick, we were going to crash many times. And those crashes often hurt pretty damn bad. But we knew that was part of it. And we knew that injuries came with those failures. And when you got injured, you got your ass into PT and you got yourself back on that hill as quick as possible. It was just part of the life. But when I transitioned to now being the coach, I now had to explain all these different things to these athletes who maybe have never failed, whose parents don't want them to get hurt and say, don't crash. And I'm saying, crash hard, crash long, and learn from it. Push it harder. And I would literally force athletes, and you can love or hate this, but this is just what it is. I would force them to go down. I would tell them, push as fast as you can, as hard as you can until that board lets loose, because then you know where the limit is. You know how hard you can push before the board lets go. And that's the zone that you need to be in. When you push to the limit, there's a fine line. That limit right there is what makes winners. That limit right there is what puts you on a podium. That limit right there is what makes you a legend. But that limit is one step away from failure. That limit is one step away from an injury. That limit is one step away from a crash. But if you don't know that limit, if you've never pushed yourself to that limit to know how fast and how hard can I go before it lets loose, how can you ever be number one? How can you ever be on that podium? Well, the answer is many don't make it to that podium because they never tested that limit. They never pushed to that limit. They never failed because somebody told them they shouldn't fail. Somebody told them, don't crash, don't get hurt, because of fear. Folks, fear isn't even real. We make it up. Unless you're getting chased by a saber-toothed tiger or a bear, that fear is real. Run your ass off. The fear we feel, we make up. We have adopted that from other people telling us about fear, from other people telling us not to do things because they never pushed to the limit. They never tested the limit to know where that failure point is and where the success is, because it's a fine line, folks. There is a very fine line that we need to walk if we want to be the best. Even if you don't want to be the best, I don't know why you wouldn't want to be the best, but even if you want to challenge yourself and push yourself to that level, You need to know what the limit is. I want you to think about that in everything in your life. I want you to think about that in your marketing. Where's the limit? How many posts are too many? How far can you push outside the norm to realize where the failure point is? How far do you have to push to figure the algorithms out? Folks, it's no different in business as it was as being a snowboarder. There are limits, fine lines, and we need to test those limits. Transition. You need to transition to understand those. And let me talk a little bit about the skate parks. I still skate a lot. And we're still talking about this transition, okay, right? I used to be a pro snowboarder, not a pro skateboarder, but I love skateboarding. I was pretty good at it. And then I quit skateboarding for a long time, partly because I didn't want to get hurt, partly because I just didn't have a fire, partly because I don't know. I just hung it up for a little while. Never stopped snowboarding, never stopped surfing, but skateboarding, I put the board away for quite a while, about 5 years. And a couple of years back, I grabbed that board, all dusty, same board, and I went down to the skate park and I dropped in. But I went and took the wrong angle in the bowl and I ate shit. Lesson. Fine line. Don't do that again. It hurt. Scraped my elbows, banged up my hand, had some people watch me. I said, yep, I got some learning to do. And I just kept going one at a time. Because you know what? In skateboarding and in life, I'm just going to read this to you. It really depends on the angle in which you drop in. The angle, the speed, your emotional state, your dedication, and the bails are what make you trust yourself. Let me repeat that. In life, the same as skateboarding, it all depends on the angle in which you drop in, the angle in which you leap. And then outside of the angle, it depends on the speed, it depends on your emotional state, and it depends on your dedication. Because you're going to find that limit. And the angle is going to get you there quicker, or it's going to get you to the failure point faster. Doesn't even matter. But it dictates your line. And once you figure that line out, when you're right there at that limit, you build the memory. Your mind remembers that. And now you can go faster. You can go harder. You can go higher. You can push that limit. You see, limits are meant to be pushed. They are not static. In snowboarding, in skateboarding, and in life, in your business, the limits that are there are these limits. Your mind limiting you. Now in snowboarding, yes, the limit might be how fast you go before you break, that board breaks free. But you know what? Just change the angle and maybe you can go faster. Change the positioning of your knee, your emotional state, your everything. That limit can be pushed. That's why in every sport you've ever seen, that sport has evolved. It's gotten better. It's gotten more exciting to watch. It's gotten faster with cars and everything else. Yes, they kept pushing the limit. And you're going to need to push the limit too. But it's going to take extra work. It's going to take a whole lot of extra work. And you can plan it out. You can get the line in your head. And once you nail it, you've got it. But it might not play out exactly the way you want. Your mind might tell you it's going to look and feel this way. But you know what? When you do it, when you drop in and you take that angle, it just might not work out the way you thought. And that's okay. It doesn't mean you're not there. It just means you got a little work to do. You got a little more failing to do before you can transition to that next line, that next limit. Question is, you strong enough to do it? Are you strong enough to fight the fear that will stop you from reaching your potential? Are you strong enough to fight the fear that will allow you to reach your limit? I don't know. Lots of people aren't. Too many people take advice from too many people that have failed. Too many people go through life conforming to other people's failed realities, to other people's failed dreams, to other people's failed lives. Is that what you want? You want to take advice from somebody that has failed and quit? You see, the only way to actually fail is to quit. Because without quitting, you can't actually fail. Failures are just learning lessons to get you to the next limit, to get you to the next line, to get you to the next level. But if you quit, like so many people I know, and so many people you know, if you quit, it's over. You have given up. You have abandoned it. You have now taken a seat with the other quitters because they told you shouldn't, you couldn't, and you can't. Those words don't exist. I can't. No, I will. I shouldn't. No, I'm gonna. It's all in your mind, folks. How fast you want to go, how far you want to go, how successful you want to be. Get the negative people out of your life. Fight for it, fail for it, and just maybe you'll reach your goals and your dreams. The transition. You're going to have lots of transitions in your life. And one of the biggest transitions I will tell you that will change your life is when you transition from you to somebody else. When I transitioned from a pro athlete to the coach, I mentally and physically transitioned to now caring more about others than I cared about myself. It's like being at the skate park. Back in the day, I was so focused on my tricks. And I still am. When I'm there, I'm focused on my tricks. But you know what? When I see somebody else do a good trick, when I see somebody else land something that's pretty impressive, man, that feeling, the coach comes out, the transitioned me comes out, and I feel joy. I feel excitement for them because now I care more about other people's success, other people solving their problems than I do about my own. If I just continue to just care about that person landing that trick the day when I know for a fact they've been practicing that trick all day long. And it doesn't even matter if I like the trick. It just means that they've succeeded. And I know what it took. I know the failures they went through to make that trick happen because I've been on that transition, because I've been on that line, because I've pushed those limits, because I felt those failures. But every single time I got up and that failure turned into the next success. Folks, all of you really have to take a deep look at yourself, a deep look at your life, and you really need to ask yourself, are you willing to transition? Are you willing to push the limits? Are you willing to do what everybody else is unwilling to do? I can't be that determining factor for you. I can just tell you my story. The transition's real, folks. You're going to face many of them in your life. Embrace them and use them to be a better you. Use them to get to a new level of success. Use them to solve other people's problems. Hope you guys enjoyed this. And thank you for joining us for another episode of the Real Estate Money School. We will see you next time.